that you're seeing in your screen is a pitcher plant, and a pitcher plant is named for its leaves, which are actually shaped like a container we call a pitcher. And pitcher plants are unusual in that they like to grow in areas that lack nitrogen and phosphorus, which are required nutrients for plants. So, how do they survive? These pitcher plants feed on insects to get the necessary nutrients. This unique adaptation of the pitcher plants allow them to thrive in hostile environments where few plants can survive. Carnivorous plants such as the pitcher plant are unusual in the plant world, but so are many others. So in this video, you will learn about what leaves are made up of by knowing their internal structure, the functions of the tissues that comprise them, and the processes involved in the nutrient and water uptake in plants. So what are leaves? Okay, the term leaf usually calls to mind foliage leaves, which are large, flat green structures involved in photosynthesis. The broad and thin foliage leaves maximize the surface area to collect the sunlight and absorb carbon dioxide. Leaves also receive water from the root system by way of vascular tissue that terminates in the leaves. Some plants, known as deciduous plants, lose their leaves often due to a yearly dry season or the onset of winter, while other trees, called evergreens, retain their leaves for the entire year. Now we proceed to the different characteristics of leaves. Listed on the slide are the following. Leaf is a lateral appendage of the stem. It is borne at the node of the stem. It is exogenous in origin, meaning to say they originate outside, along the lateral lines of the plant. It has limited growth. It does not possess an apical bud, and it has three main parts, namely the leaf base, the petiole, and the lamina, also known as the leaf blade. And the lamina of the leaf is traversed by vascular strands called the veins. So what are the functions, of leaves? We separate the functions into two. We have the primary functions and the secondary functions. So for this one, the leaves perform actually three main functions, such as manufacture of food, interchange of gases between the atmosphere and the plant body, and evaporation of water. But in addition, leaves also function in the protection of buds, conduction of water, and dissolved solutes, and preventing water loss in the entire plant through opening and closing of the stomata. The secondary functions include the following. Natural selection has resulted in numerous types of leaves that are selectively advantageous because they provide protection, support, storage, and reproduction, even nitrogen procurement, such as trapping and digesting of insects. Studying the various leaf types, their modifications, and the roles they play in the plant's biology leads to an understanding of how structure, metabolism, and function are all related. As we learn the general characteristics and functions of leaves, it is now time to discuss in detail what makes up leaves. Recall that the vascular plant organs, namely the roots, the stems, and the leaves, are composed of three fundamental tissue systems. These are the dermal, the vascular, and the ground tissues. However, specific characteristics of these tissues vary in different organs. For our discussion, we will be focusing on the tissues of leaves. So, you are looking right now at the leaf epidermis. The leaf epidermis is covered by a waxy cuticle. It is a water-repelling layer on the outer surface of a leaf that helps keep it from drying out and protect it from invading bacteria, insects, and fungi. The cuticle is secreted by the epidermis and is often thinner on the underside of the leaves. The cuticle is generally thicker on plants that live in dry environments. Also, we have stomata, or singular stoma. It is an opening in leaves where water vapor and other gases enter and exit the plant. Generally, many more stomata are found on the bottom of a leaf than on the top. This is an adaptation to prevent excess water loss. Stomata are formed by two guard cells. These two guard cells surround a stoma, and these cells change shape, causing the stoma to open and close. Next, we are looking at the ground tissue of a leaf. The leaf's ground tissue is called the mesophyll, from the Greek mesos meaning middle and phyll meaning leaf. The mesophyll consists mainly of parenchyma cells, specialized for photosynthesis. If you recall, parenchyma cells are used mainly for storage, especially since their cell walls are very thin. It has two distinct layers, this mesophyll layer, the palisade and the spongy. The palisade mesophyll consists of one or more layers of elongated parenchyma cells on the upper part of the leaf. This is the palisade mesophyll. The spongy mesophyll, on the other hand, is below the palisade mesophyll. And as you can observe, these parenchyma cells are more loosely arranged, resulting to having large pockets of air spaces. These air spaces are particularly large in the vicinity near the stomata, where carbon dioxide is taken up from the outside air and oxygen is released. Next, you are looking at the vascular tissue of a leaf. The vascular tissue of leaf consists of veins, which are vascular bundles inside leaves and are often a leaf's most prominent external feature. The vein brings xylem and phloem into close contact with the photosynthetic mesophyll cells. And it obtains water and minerals from the xylem and loads its sugars and other organic compounds into the phloem for transport to other parts of the plant. Further, the vascular structure also functions as a framework that reinforces the shape of the leaf. Each vein is enclosed by a protective bundle sheath, a layer of cells that regulates the movement of substances between the vascular tissue and the mesophyll. To know more about the components of the vascular tissue, let's look at it in closer detail. The two types of water-conducting cells of the xylem, by the way, this is the xylem and this is the phloem. This is a cutaway view of a leaf. So we have in the xylem the tracheids and the vessel elements, which are tubular, elongated cells that are dead and lignified at functional maturity. If you compare the two, the tracheids are long, thin cells with tapered ends, while vessel elements are generally wider, shorter, thinner walled, and less tapered than the tracheids. Unlike the water-conducting cells of xylem, the sugar-conducting cells of the phloem are alive at functional maturity. Nutrients are transported through sieve tubes, accompanied by a non-conducting cell called a companion cell. Now, it was mentioned that leaves are the main sites for photosynthesis and gas exchange. Equally important in the acquisition of resources of a plant is through the conduction of water and food from the different organs of the plant body. In the next slides, we will discuss how water through transpiration is conducted and how food from the leaves of the plant to the other non-photosynthetic parts are delivered. So people have long wondered how plants, especially very tall trees, lift water from the roots to the leaves against gravity. So transpiration is the loss of water to the environment mainly through evaporation from leaf stomata. This is the phenomenon that explains how water can completely resist gravity and travel upward. Through this mechanism, the leaves can obtain water and nutrients taken up by the soil. How exactly water enters the roots? Recall the concept of osmosis. In plants, water will move from an area of high concentration in the soil to an area of low concentration in the root hairs. The water that has entered the roots continue to travel upwards. You might ask, how do water molecules maintain an upward motion? So the key is that it is not just one water molecule escaping, but a chain of water molecules. Think about drinking water from a straw. Drinking exerts pressure on the straw, and chain of water molecules is drawn upward. Water molecules are polar and thus stick together with hydrogen bonds. The water's ability to stay linked in a chain is called cohesion, and its ability to stick inside of the straw, or in this case the xylem tubes, is called adhesion. Both of these processes allow for the upward motion of water molecules, preventing it from falling down due to the force of gravity. Now we're looking at the transpiration happening in the leaves, which is actually our main focus. In plants, evaporation of water at the leaves provide the tension that pulls on a chain of water molecules. Transpiration produces a constant tugging or pulling of the water column from the top due to evaporation. Cohesion of water molecules and their adhesion to the inside of xylem vessels facilitate this process. As transpiration occurs, the water column is pulled upward, first within the leaf, then from the stem, and finally from the roots. So the stomata open and close due to changes in turgor pressure within the guard cells. In this image, we can see that the turgor pressure is the force of the water creating the bulge in the guard cells. This, by the way, is the guard cell. It's the banana shape that encloses the stomata. When water enters the guard cells, turgor pressure increases and the unique banana shape of the guard cells causes them to bow out and expose the pore of the stomata. When water leaves the guard cells, on the other hand, turgor pressure decreases and the pore is once again covered. For transpiration to occur, the stomata must stay open. But when a plant is under stress and about to wilt from the lack of water, the stomata will close. Now the plant will be unable to take up carbon dioxide from air and photosynthesis ceases. Previously, we have learned about transpiration, which is the evaporation of water from the roots of the plant until the leaves. Now, we are going to discuss the transport of sugar. If water is needed to be conducted in all parts of the plant, of course, food is just as equally important. How can food be delivered to all other organs of the plant? So a plant must make and store sugar, then provide that sugar to its developing parts such as the roots, the flowers, and the fruits. The location where the sugar is made or stored is called the source. Okay, and it's usually in the presence of the leaves because the leaves are the photosynthetic ones. And the location where the sugar will be used is the sink, such as the roots. How sugar is transported from the source to the sink can be explained using the pressure flow model. So leaves undergoing photosynthesis makes sugar and become the source. The sugar is actively transported from the cells in the leaf mesophyll into the sieve tubes of the phloem. The high concentrations of sugar in the sieve tubes cause water to follow by osmosis. The sugar solution at the source is forced to move to areas of lower pressure at a sink like a root. So when the sugar arrives at the root, it is actively transported out of the sieve tubes into the root cells. There, the sugar is used for cellular respiration or other metabolic processes. Although leaves are generally the source, some modified roots and stems such as carrots, beets, and potatoes are also examples of sources that provide much needed sugar, especially during winter or periods of dormancy. So to summarize, leaves are composed of three tissue systems: the dermal, the ground, and vascular tissues. The stomata, which are epidermal pores formed by pairs of guard cells, allow for gaseous exchange and are major avenues for water loss. Mesophyll cells that compose the ground tissue network of leaves are adapted mainly for photosynthesis. Leaves carry on photosynthesis but may be modified for other purposes. Vascular tissue transports water and nutrients and is made up of xylem and phloem. Xylem transports water and minerals and contain vessels composed of vessel elements and tracheids. Phloem, on the other hand, transports sugar and other compounds and contains sieve tubes composed of sieve tube members, each of which has a companion cell.